Everybody, welcome to Deep Dive. This is In Times Like These. Pastor Allen just spoke, part 2. This is Sunday, right after the message. We dive deep into and what we just heard, give opportunity for Pastor to speak some more and discuss kind of what that message was. I really love this series. I got a lot of great feedback, too, from people really enjoying this series. Right. It is very, can I say, timely. In times like these. The times are different than they were. Would you say even a couple of years ago?
Not so much a couple of years ago, but I would say the dramatic change in the last 25 years has been pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, having lived overseas, come back.
Yeah.
I remember coming back after spending about 5 years living overseas, and I was surprised at how far culture had moved.
Yeah.
It was one of the first times I felt a little cultural shock in a way of like, wow, like this is a thing now. This. And because I guess when you're gone, you come back, even though we still had the internet and we were still connected.
Right.
It's like being back in America was like a little culturally like, oh, this is on TV.
Well, it's like growing. You don't see yourself grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when someone who hasn't seen you when you're a kid and they hadn't seen you, like, oh my gosh, how much you've grown. Well, you don't see it because it's gradual, but it's fast gradual.
I feel like it's accelerating.
Yeah, it has. I agree.
I do agree with you. I mean, in times we are living in a darker age, I would say, than we have in the past.
Well, the farther we move away from God, the darker it gets.
Yeah.
God is light. And so the farther we move from there, the darker it gets. And I think as we're approaching the end of this era, the end of this time, things are just speeding up. It's kind of like it's closer you get to the end, it's
almost like exponential growth.
Yeah, it's almost like
it's multiplying.
Like the flywheel is really.
Do you
moving.
think we're closer? I mean, I know we're always closer too, but
well, we're closer than we were yesterday. So but I do think we're closer. We're starting to see some of the components of what could be a world government, a world currency, a world. I mean, we see the workings of these things now.
Yeah. It's more clear, and you are seeing people just rejecting God on a stronger, louder basis than I think there ever was before. Maybe it's just America, but I do feel like it's worldwide.
Well, in Europe, it actually is much more severe.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Last days, I love the story too. We're talking about how to respond in culture into a darker culture.
Yes,
I do think this is really important for Christians to hear and people to hear because I don't think personally that Christians have reacted well to the upcoming darkness as a whole.
Well, I think it caught us, especially, I think I said it last week, the older you are, the more dramatic you've seen the changes.
Right.
And so, and if you're younger, if you've grown up with it, then your perspective is you're angry because people are confronting you. If you're older, you're looking at the confrontation and you're looking at the change, how dramatic, it's been. And so, it's changed pretty dramatically, and it continues to. And we're dealing with things now we never thought we would. I mean, the idea that we're dealing with this gender confusion, that one caught me by surprise. That one really did.
Yeah, and even like the fact that it's being pushed on kids is that to me. I mean, because I guess I'm older now, almost 40.
Yeah.
I feel like the old guy.
Do you need like an electronic chair?
I need a little wheelchair.
Well, you're starting.
I'm starting to see. I'm living in that world. I'm like, dang, I'm old now because I'm like.
Well, let's chill on that old stuff.
I knew I was old though when I heard some of my favorite songs in the grocery store. I'm like at Kroger. I'm like,
here we go.
Like this is a beat right here. I'm like, wait a minute.
That's my song.
This is Kroger.
Yeah.
I'm not supposed to be listening to that right now. Why are they playing Wilco? But yeah, it does feel like some of the stuff we're dealing with, I'm like with kids and like the introduction. I mean, even some of the things, everything's getting politicized. And I feel like as the world's gone darker, I feel like sides are just splitting in the width. But Christians, I don't feel like have done an incredibly great job. And I don't want to condemn all Christians or paint everybody with a wide brush, but I feel like overall we could do better.
I think we can do better.
Yeah.
I think we have to realize that our anger is not going to change anybody.
Right. Yeah.
Our arguing is not going to change anybody.
The Bible says it's not the wrath of God.
The wrath of man does not work the righteousness of God.
Yeah. I think as Christians, like ranting and railing against culture and society, I don't know if it does a whole lot for us.
Well, again, if we're responding in the same spirit in which they're responding to us, I think I think we don't make progress.
Right.
So in other words, we need to show them something different.
Yeah.
But if we're doing the very same thing they're doing, then I don't think they're seeing anything different.
Yeah. If they're shouting and we're shouting back at them,
we're all angry.
Then,
I saw some picture the other day of some pro-life, pro-choice demonstrators.
Yeah.
And I mean, these two guys they're both big guys, but they're right in each other. And you can just tell they're yelling and they're mad. I'm like, that is not going to change anyone.
Right.
It's not going to do it.
Yeah.
And so, I'm not saying that being kind and gracious to people, but, it's interesting that in Philippians, it said, rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice, 4th chapter. And then Paul says, let your graciousness be known to all men. The Lord's in hand. And so if we recognize that the only reason we look at this perspective is because we were taken out of darkness into light, that's the only reason we have this perspective. So we can't act like we created it. That's where our problem. We act like, well, we created this. No, you didn't. If it wasn't for the mercy and grace of God, you'd be lost.
That's very. I heard. Yeah, that's really true. When we act arrogantly or yell, it's like it's of our own.
Yeah.
Like, hey, look at me, I'm better than you because I believe X or I know about this.
Right.
And really, that's how the world responds. And,
totally.
And we're like, but I heard a guy who said, like, whenever he would see someone fall or someone do something wrong, he would say to himself, but by the grace of God, that would be me.
Yeah, it's true. True. Well, Bible, Jesus said, the reproaches of them that reproached you fell on me. He said, when he was reviled, this is 1 Peter 2:23, when he was reviled, when they said unkind things about it, he did not revile in return. When he suffered, he didn't threaten, but he committed himself to him who judges righteously. And so there's one righteous judge. And we just have to understand that the rest of us really aren't qualified. And so we have to watch that. That's that story that I told this morning, I think was just I wasn't even going to tell that story. And the Lord nudged me on that one because I thought.
The one with the handing the money?
Yeah, handing the money.
That was a powerful story.
Yeah, I thought it was a great story.
I mean, I was touched just thinking like.
But life has been harsh to so many people.
Right.
I mean, they're angry, but a lot of times they've been abused or they've been neglected or they've been forgotten or they've had a lot of heartache and everything they've tried hasn't helped. And so hurt people. They lash out.
Yeah, I love that story. I thought it's powerful because I think we've maybe all had that argument of like, God's like, I want you to do this.
Yeah.
And I think a little bit tacking back on what I was talking about with stewardship, it's like usually the opposite of what you might think or feel is sometimes the way God's going to say something and do something. And it's like, she did the opposite of what she wanted to do. And she saw God produce an incredible outcome and speak to someone's life.
Really touch her life.
And how would you define using, like if someone's upset or how would you define being gracious to that person?
A lot of times, for me, I just have to go quiet.
Okay.
Because I have a tendency to be too verbal.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times just engaging or firing off, I need to, the scripture says, be quick to hear, slow to speak, slow to get angry. For the anger of man, the wrath of man doesn't work the righteousness of God. And so I have to practice that because I'm pretty quick. You're the same way. Yeah. And so I have to kind of wait and be quiet. And so I find the slower I am to speak, the better off I am.
Because your natural reaction to be ungracious would be to respond in kind.
Yeah. Especially if you tend to be more verbal.
Yeah.
It's like, I hate to say it, when I was in college, I used to pride myself on the ability to verbally dice you up. And I'm sure that made me a lot of friends. So
one of the things you do is I'm just going to be quiet.
I'm going to be quiet. Wait. Quick to hear, slow to speak.
We don't need to respond to everything.
If you notice, Jesus didn't. And you also notice he asked a lot of questions. So you'd say something to Jesus and you go, well, I got a question for you. and so he would often answer questions. So I'm not obligated to answer everybody's questions.
That's and you're not obligated to respond to everybody.
No.
And sometimes the best response
response
is a smile. And
okay.
Love the story of Daniel. I think probably one of the better stories of someone who was in you want to talk about dark culture. I think we forget that when you have a culture that's literally demonic and following after, extremely violent, had taken over the entire world, maybe killed your friends and relatives, you're working for them now.
Right.
And they're worshiping idols constantly, demonic activity, who knows what else.
Yeah, dark place.
And you're still going to live and work. I mean, he wasn't yelling at the king saying, "King, you're wrong, you're a sinner."
Not just live and work, man. Thrive.
Yeah.
He thrived there. He got promoted there.
Yeah.
And so I think if he was responding in anger, if he was responding in the wrong way, I think he would have hindered God's ability to move him forward.
If he was like shouting and yelling at the king.
Yeah. Well, from the very beginning when he said, he asked if he could not eat the food. He didn't condemn them. They didn't know anything about unclean food.
Yeah. Daniel didn't say, "All you sinners eating this unclean food."
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to eat this. Because that's the humility, I think. It's more about, this is my relationship with the Lord. Right. This has nothing to do with
you.
Yeah, because he lived in the much more darker culture, much more culture.
I would think it would be much more. I mean, it's much more violent. If you're a king, you don't even have to get an executive order to cut people in pieces and make their homes an ash heap. That's serious.
And thinking about fear too is like you're on the verge of getting murdered, and you're like, "Hey, what's going on?" Like, I mean, that's a pretty
the fact. The Bible made a point of saying he responded in counsel and wisdom. So his wisdom was not getting angry or panicking. It was, why is the king's matter so harsh? Well, why the anger? It's a good question. Why the anger?
That's a great,
It's probably a good question to ask when people are, why the anger?
Yeah. Why?
But you Christians are like, well, no, hang on.
Yeah. Where's this anger coming from? Why are you responding? And
why the anger? That's a good.
That's a great. I think when we ask that question, it makes us maybe more empathetic with what's going on with people. Because I think, I love that story. And I think it's a great story for our times. Staying out in a foreign land. I got the wrong one. I picked up.
How are you going to deep dive when you got the wrong questions?
I remember. Wait, your first point was we had to act in grace, right?
We have to walk differently.
Yes.
Going off of Paul's instructions to the Ephesians, that you were once darkness, but now you're light in the Lord. Walk as children of light.
Right.
And then he said, for the fruit of the Spirit is, or one translation says, for the fruit of the light is in all goodness, righteousness, and truth. So you really talk about the fruit of our lives needs to be good and what's right and what's true.
Yeah.
And so that's walking as children of the light. I'm not saying we have to compromise truth.
Right. Yes.
But we're doing it in such a way as we're not going to go that direction, but we're not going to be the same spirit.
Yeah, because Daniel did not compromise truth. But he still didn't. He didn't bend to what the king wanted him to do, no. And he didn't bend to society or culture.
Yeah, next week we're going to talk about the ultimate bending.
Yeah.
So that's true.
Yeah, and that's not easy to do. And I think that's where sometimes Christians can get like, well, I got to speak my truth, and I got to speak truth.
Yeah,
that's my role.
Yeah.
What do you feel about that? People who feel like I got to speak truth to situations like this.
There is a place where speaking truth comes to play. I just, again, are we trying to shove it down someone's throat? Now, the challenge is when they're trying to shove it down our throat, and we can just go, we don't agree.
Yeah.
We just don't agree.
Yeah. And I think you've said, unless you really feel specific in your heart,
right,
that the Lord's called you to say something truthful to somebody,
right,
you typically don't, right?
There's a, Matt, I think one of the biggest challenges we're not even talking about is that we have a culture that's anti-God.
Right.
But as Christians, we're spending way too much time attacking each other. And that's what really needs to go away. It's like,
that's true.
Honestly, I mean, there are people all over the theological map that they don't agree with me and I don't agree with them. If we agree on Jesus, that's enough. We can stop right there.
Yeah, we should.
We can get to heaven and sort it all out there.
Because we throw stones at each other,
that's not
and
helpful.
Then we're throwing stones at the world.
Yeah.
The world points and looks at us, go like, why?
So what's the difference?
What's the difference?
Yeah, what's the difference? And they'll say things like that. Well, these people believe that, and people believe that. I think one of the best answers is, you remember in the scriptures where Jesus healed that blind man, and he's carrying his bed Was that the?
Is that when he gets in trouble and they bring his parents before the court?
Yeah, bring his parents before the court, and the parent, and they said to the parents, what happened to your son? And the parents like, hey, he's of age, ask him. And he had a great answer. They said, well, if this man was a sinner, what do you say about that? He said, well, I don't know about that. He said, I just know this. I was blind and now I can see. And I think one of the best answers is, I don't know about all that. I do know that I had no peace in my heart and I was lost.
Yeah.
And when I made Jesus my Lord, that changed.
Yeah.
I know that he's helped me in my marriage. I don't know about all, well, what about this? Well, I know about all that. I know this works for me.
Yeah. He knew personally what Jesus had done for them.
Yeah, personally. So I think that's where your personal testimony makes a difference. Oh, I don't know about all that. Well, what about so-and-so? What these preachers fell and these, it's like, I don't know about all that. I just know that the Lord's helped me and he's restored my marriage and he's healed my children and he's healed me and he has strengthened me and he's enabled me to have an opportunity to share with a lot of different people. He's been awfully good to me. So I don't know about all them. I can just tell you he's been good to me.
Was the simplicity of Christ?
Yeah, the simplicity, yeah.
Yeah. And then you talked about too, on your second point, you talked about walking in a confidence in the Lord.
Yeah.
Great story about Michael.
Yeah.
It was funny because that is our family. We're like, what, Michael? He's good. He's first chair.
Yeah, he really.
Yeah, we never
thought he was that good.
No, we were like, what, Michael? Because we remember the dog and the violin.
Yeah, but I think Mom said something about, she came in one day and he was sitting on the floor, and all of you guys walked in at the same time because he was playing that. Here I come to worship. He just picked it up. He was playing it
without the music.
We're like, oh, that's pretty.
Yeah, no, I love it when he plays violin.
He can play.
He can really.
I really wanted him to play today, but he was.
I know.
He was ministering in the youth.
No, he does a great job. But I thought it was a great story because there's a lot of experts out there that are saying a lot of things right now, and I think honestly, it's like, who do you believe? I was listening to a podcast recently, and these guys were like, where do you get information nowadays? Because I've heard people don't say, like, even if you read news stories about yourself, it's almost always wrong. Like, the news always gets it wrong, almost constantly, even when it's a good piece, they get it wrong.
And I think I think we really are at a day where we really have to take a lot of things with some skepticism.
Yeah.
And so, because the experts can't agree, and so, like I said, but when they start beating the drum on something, that's for me is enough for me to back up. When the world really starts pushing something, that's when I start to back up and go, okay, let me take a look at this.
They beat the drum about 10 years ago on social media saying this is going to change the world, it's going to bring everybody together, and this was the greatest thing ever invented, and now the world's going to be unified. Yeah. Do you think we're more unified now than we were 10 years ago?
It has done. It has isolated us. Oh. It has polarized things.
Yeah.
I had some staff members trying to get me to have Twitter live during my messages, so that people could be asking me questions. I'm like, no.
Or you were pushed to get your own. You don't have any social media profiles that are public, and so you were pushed to, hey, you need to get a presence on social media.
I had social media for about 5 months.
Yeah.
And I thought, nah. I just gave it up. You know what? I've saved myself a lot of grief. You guys run that.
Yeah, we run it, but our team runs it. But I think it's funny because 10 years ago, it was like the greatest thing in the world. This is going to save the world. Now we're looking at it and we're like, well, we got to clamp down social media. Oh, it's really unhealthy for teenagers. Oh, look at this. It's made us more divided. Oh, look, people are stealing elections with it.
But whenever the world starts screaming about something, and this is the answer, they don't have the answer.
Yeah, it's a great indicator. They're almost like the canary in the coal mine, right? They're like, oh, you're saying this is great. I needed to go the opposite way of what you're saying.
Very true.
What does it look like to walk in humility in today's day? What does that look like?
Well, I'm very proud of my ability to walk in humility.
How do you not come across as? Because I remember you said you said when your mom you'd be praying and you like, it's a good day, and your mom would be like, the Lord has made it a good day.
Well, that was just more her trying to shove Jesus down my throat.
Right. So how do you walk in humility and do it in a way that doesn't come off as arrogant? I don't know. Sometimes people's humility comes across as more arrogance.
Well, they're proud of their humility. I think genuine humility is an acknowledgement that what we have came from God, and so we're not humility. I think we've shied away from it because we've likened it to poor self-esteem.
Right.
And it's not poor self-esteem. It's just acknowledging that what we have, it came from the Lord. You know, Jesus himself said, I do what my Father showed me. He said, my doctrine's not my own. It's him who sent me. So he really had an acknowledgement of what he's doing. This isn't my message. It's the gospel. It's the Bible. And so do we want the credit? Are we taking the credit? Or are we giving the credit to the Lord?
Yeah.
You're talking about a huge subject.
It's gigantic. I know.
That's a huge subject. But I think where it gets to is we're saying, you know, I'm acknowledging the Lord, that if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. If it wasn't for him, and so, sometimes as a pastor, I get attention because I'm a public speaker. But if it wasn't for the Lord's giftings, I wouldn't have the ability to do that. So no sense in me puffing my chest out.
It's so easy to do, to take credit.
Very easy.
It's human nature just wants to.
The glory of man. The three things that the book of John says we need to deal with: the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And so it's the passions, possessions, and position are the three areas that we have to watch for. And that pride of life. I'm wealthier than other people. That makes me something. Well, it might make you a good businessman. It doesn't necessarily make you great, in other areas.
Right.
Charles Barkley said it right years ago. I ain't no role model. He said, I play basketball. He said, I'm not a role model. And so I think understanding where you are, what your position is, and what the Lord did for you is one way.
And acknowledging that all the time.
Acknowledging.
Do you think thankfulness?
And that's where thankfulness and I will bless the Lord at all time. His praise will always be, will continually be in my mouth. My soul will make its boast in the Lord, and the humble will hear of it and be glad. One of the keys I know with humility is somebody will say something to me one time, oh, you've built a great church here. I'm like, hang on, I didn't build a great church. The Lord has built a great church. If they kick back on that, no, well, I know you worked hard. You're dealing with pride there. You want credit. And so a lot of times it says the humble will hear of it. You hear someone boasting about what the Lord's done, those people in humility go, amen, that's good. I'm glad for what the Lord has done. So the ones who kick back on it are the ones who probably deal with pride. And listen, all of us deal with pride.
Yeah.
Probably the ones that deal with pride themselves.
That's a really great indicator. Is like, how do you receive when people say, hey, this is the Lord that did this?
The Lord helped me.
Then you should be like, man, praise the Lord.
Yeah, the Lord. The Lord helped me. So yeah, we're glad.
And being thankful really is a great way to move the tank into humility.
I think it's a great way.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great message. Looking forward to next week. Also keep watching the first chapter of James, which is Wednesday nights.
Yeah, we're still on it.
We're going through that.
You can see why I'm not going to get through this book. But your mom said, you need to stop saying you're not going to get through it. I said, no, I'm telling you, I'm not going to get through it. I'm not going to get through it.
We don't have 18 weeks.
Oh my gosh. We could just fill this thing up.
Yeah.
But I'm enjoying it.
It's great. Fun. Check it out on YouTube. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.
All right, man. See ya.